Corporal James Richard Kerin, United States Marine Corps, World War II. Dick is one of the first Marines I interviewed from World War II. It was December 8th, 2004 in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I still remember it was like yesterday. It's 20 years ago, folks. And we lost Dick in 2019 at the age of 94. But 14 years before that, I interviewed him, like I said, in Cincinnati. So I'm so happy to have his story. Just an unsung hero, one of my Marines, and you'll love his story, I guarantee it. He served with B Company, 1st Battalion, 27th Marines, 5th Marine Division, folks. Infamous Marine Division that went into Iwo Jima. He saw action first in Bougainville and the Solomon Islands in November 1943, where he was wounded for the first time. And then also at Iwo Jima, after 20 days at Iwo Jima, he was wounded, so 2 Purple Hearts, and he also received a Silver Star on Iwo Jima for his gallantry. So highly decorated, just a blessing. I'm really happy to share this story with you today. And I want to thank Rita Schultz. Rita came forward and wanted to honor her father, Marine Sergeant Lester Pasquale. He was a machine gun instructor, and he also was a platoon leader, fought in 2 islands in the South Pacific and received 2 Purple Hearts. So we want to honor Lester today and thank Rita for stepping forward and bringing forth your dad's story. I so appreciate it, Rita. And we're gonna share Richard's story in his memory. And I'm just so grateful for you for supporting my work, and I think others out there will thank you for it too, Rita. So it's great working with you. And folks, if you'd like to do like Rita, come forward. You have a loved one in your family, I'll show a picture of them. You email me a picture. Be happy to honor them in memory of one of the stories, one of my many stories. So just let me know if you'd like to do that. There's information in the video description, or you can write me at larrycappello.com. Go to my website, contact me, or just sponsor a veteran through the video description below each video, and just include the name of your loved one, a little bit about them, and then I'll take it from there. So great way to go forward and to honor your loved one by helping sponsor one of the veterans that I've interviewed. So it's a good fit there. So okay, folks, I think that's about it. I'm really happy to share Dick's story with you. Like I said, he's been gone for about 5 years now, but I was so happy to be in Cincinnati at that time interviewing other people that you've seen on this channel. And it's time to share Dick's story. So without further ado, I present to you Corporal Dick Kerin, United States Marine Corps. Share these videos, folks, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't. Let's keep this thing going. God bless you. Landing. And I think the first thing I want to ask you is, just for the film, for the camera, just tell me again, you were at the 5th Marine Division, 27th Marines. Tell me the whole...
Okay. Now, do you want me to give you the views as I saw it?
Yeah, so I'll ask you...
You're going to ask questions.
I'm going to ask you specific questions.
Okay,
yeah,
right.
But just for the record, spell your first and last name for me.
My first, well, my
James?
James Richard Kerin, K-E-R-I-N.
Okay. I had that spelled wrong. I'm glad you gave that to me. Okay. Mm-hmm. And tell me again, the 5th Marine Division, tell me.
B Company, 1st Battalion, 27th Marines, 5th Marine Division.
Okay, okay. What was your rank?
Corporal. I was a PFC at Iwo Jima. Okay. Later corporal. Okay. I was discharged as corporal.
Okay, okay. That's good. Okay. Just, Dick, go back in your mind. You've probably done this many times, but just what I like to do is first of all ask you, where were you
is one of the boat, actually the boat, as they called it, which carried amphibian tractors to take the men into for the invasion of Iwo Jima. And we were all topside. They had a crew of about 111 officers and men, but we were on there. We had about half of our company. We slept topside. We slept, if it rained, we just pulled a poncho over us or whatever. We spent most of our time up there. Guys were playing cards and so on, and loading machine gun belts, sharpening K-bar knives, getting weapons oiled and ready to go. And we spent the evening into the night up there. And of course, then we actually, I think chow was at about 4 o'clock in the morning. And we went through the galley down in the lower depths of the LST, and we got ready to load up.
Okay, let's stop right there now. Again, tell me again, that night before, had you guys been briefed of what you're going into? Did you think it was going to be a piece of cake? The island has been bombed. It's been shelled. Did you think, were you concerned about being killed at that point, at that time, and thinking? Did you have a prayer service? I mean, how were you reflecting on all that?
Yes, we did. Well, we had actually that night. The concern was what's going to happen in the morning when we go in. We knew that H hour was at 8 o'clock, 8:30, and we knew that we would be getting everything ready to go that night. Fortunately, we had good weather. Then we went over last minute preparations, got ready to the areas where we were going to hit. Red Beach 2, which we were told we would hit, which was right below, almost below, but a little south, I guess, a little north maybe it was, of Mount Suribachi. And then we all guys got together and sat around shooting a bull. Some of them, you knew some of them were wondering, and maybe myself, I don't recall, but is this our last night? Because we knew we were pretty well sure now of what we were going to get into. Not as badly as it was, but we sat around talking about it, what we're going to do tomorrow, and when we landed, and a lot of guys were talking about their families and so forth, and just general conversation. And
did you feel like you were invincible at that age? Like,
yes,
nothing can happen to me?
I always felt that way. You could actually tell some individuals who were almost, you felt like they were doomed because of their attitude was, I don't think I'm going to make it through this. Now, I heard several of them, say that. I always thought I was going to make it, and fortunately I did. But it was one of the things when we went in.
Don't tell me about the landing yet.
Okay.
Just the night before now. We'll get there in a second.
Okay. All right.
You're telling me good stuff. I'm getting to feel the mood.
Okay.
And everything. And remember what I remember from history and reading and stuff as far as the night before. What did you know about Iwo Jima strategically? Why were the Marines going into Iwo Jima?
We were going in there to take a couple of airstrips. The B-29s were flying from Tinian to bomb Japan. And they were having trouble getting back, getting all shot up and so forth. And a number of them, they had to ditch at sea. So when they decided to take Iwo Jima, it was supposed to be a 3 to 5 day operation. And then they told us, you're going over to Jima. And perhaps you've read about that, the Flyboys and so forth, and President Bush. But we thought, well, this isn't going to be too bad. Take that place in 3 to 4 days, and then we'll hop over to Jima and take that. And we were convinced that's what we were going to do. We were pretty well sold on the idea, that this is going to be the quick operation, and then Jima is going to be the tough one.
Okay, so you had a meal, or did you sleep that night? You had a meal early in the morning, steak and eggs?
Yeah, that's right, steak and eggs.
And so they're fattening you up for the kill.
Right.
So they're giving you a good meal.
Yeah, it was, and I remember sleeping pretty well that night. It didn't bother me, and I thought, well, we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Okay, let's get into tomorrow slowly now. Take me slowly now, Dick. Now, you're awakened. How are you awakened? Are you reporting? Are you going to debarkation stations? Did you get onto an LBT? Did you go to shore? And give me the process of getting you to shore now.
Well, I've forgotten exactly the time. I think it was maybe 4 o'clock, something like that in the morning at 4:30, that we were awakened and so on, and we went down to chow. And the amphibian tractors were all in the hold there, and we knew which one we were to go in. We had previously held maneuvers on Saipan in the same ship and the same amphibian tractors. And we figured, we'll go down and eat and get all ready to go. And something that they did, which people find kind of surprising, they sprayed us with DDT. Had us open our jackets and so forth, and they sprayed us with DDT. They had a thing on the island called scrub typhus, which I understand would penetrate the pores and get into the lungs. And I think that's the way it was put to us. And then we, after that was done, we got all ready to board the amphibian tractors. They put a white cream all over our face, ears, hands, any exposed part of the skin, which was called anti-flash burn. And the reason for that was when we went past the ships that were firing, like we went right past the bow of the Tennessee, which was a battleship firing 14-inch guns. And the flash from those guns would burn an individual, the flesh. Clothing would protect against it, and so would the flash cream. But when you looked at each other, you couldn't believe it. How you looked with that white, the pallor of death. One guy put it. And when we put all that stuff on, we went down, got into those amphibian tractors, and we went out through the open doors of the LSD and went around in circles till we got the whole group together, the company, and then they got ready to go. And when they dropped the pennant at 8:30 that morning, we were ready to go. And that's when we started in.
So how are you feeling? Are you anxious? Are you like, let's get on with this? I mean, what's the mood? Is anybody talking? I mean, you're take me to shore now. I think you went into the second wave.
Yes, right.
Okay. What I want you to do is talk about, you guys circled, and then on an order you head off to the beach.
Right.
So the first wave had gone in. Now, okay, I'm asking you a couple of questions, and I don't want to get to the beach yet, so I'm not going to get there yet, but just tell me about, okay, the first wave's gone in, you're going in the second wave. Tell me about that ride to shore and what you were seeing, hearing, and whatever.
When we were circling around the rendezvous, as they called it, to get ready to go in to form the second line, and we went right past the bow of the Tennessee. And these sailors are all up there going, and these guys sailors were all up on the Tennessee, and they were going like this, give them hell, Marines. We could hear them. Give them hell, Marines. We're that close to the bow of the Tennessee. And I had a little missal, Catholic missal. I was reading it, and some of the other guys were. Some of them were sitting there praying. A few sitting there smoking a cigarette, just casual, and so forth. And everything was very subdued, and we just, maybe a little bit of chatter and kind of low, and the guy next to you or something like that. And we started in.
Tell me about the amphibian tractor and the sound it makes and how it felt going in on the water.
Well, it made a pretty loud noise, and of course you're bobbing up and down with the surf, and as we went on in, we could see the others were rendezvousing too and pulling along in the same line that we were. And the thing we were mostly concerned, we were watching the bombing and the Navy and Marine pilots in there strafing the shores and so forth. Fantastic show. We'd see those big bombs exploding on Mount Suribachi and those planes coming back in. The aerial show was unbelievable. It was.
So there was an air of confidence and security that maybe they're going to have killed all the Japanese or
right.
What have you.
That's a good point, because the thing that we were so disillusioned about, they had bombed that place for 77 straight days, and you're probably familiar with some of the history of it. And we thought, there won't be anything on that beach. There won't be anything alive on that beach.
In fact, it was 60 years ago today, December 8th is when they started bombing, by the way.
I wasn't aware of that.
I read that, yeah.
No, I wasn't aware of that. But and we felt that, you know, well, probably right. We'll be in there a few days and hop on over to the other island and take that. And actually, we had rations for I think we had rations for 4 days. And, you know, they said, well, you'll be there a short time. And when we hit that beach, we knew we were in trouble.
Okay, let's start talking about getting to the beach, because I think they said for the first hour, the Japanese waited until everybody got on the beach. And unlike the landing in France that Rommel and Hitler had gone, when the Americans landed there, they started shooting right away. I think this Japanese leader,
Kurabayashi.
he allowed everybody to get on the beach, and then he opened fire. So tell me now, as the second wave, I don't think they'd begun shooting yet on the beach, had they? When you landed, did the first wave get hit?
The first wave, they let the first wave in.
Okay.
And the problem we encountered, they had it terraced off, which we never expected. And it was up like this, and it'd be up about 30 feet. And when you try to climb up through that volcanic ash, you'd actually went almost up to your knees. And you know, I tell you what it was like. It was trying to run through water. And the first wave got in, and they started up, and they got up a little bit, and they let them go. And we thought, well, you know, this isn't going to be bad at all. So we got in, and as we got up toward the top, that's when all the firing and everything broke loose. And of course, the first wave was on over there. They were exposed out in the open. And then the third wave came in, and when this happened, they started really unloading on the beach. And the ones that really got it on the beach were the fourth and fifth and sixth waves that came in. And I recall vividly seeing guys that were wounded and lying there, and they couldn't move, and these amphibian tractors coming in, going right over them. And people, you know, say, you know, could we, you know, you think we're going to believe that kind of stuff? That's why, you know, that's why a lot of these guys don't tell people about their experiences like that. And we lost, and I was telling one of the classes out at Coleraine High School, I spoke out there a couple of weeks ago, we lost 26% of our company on the beach. Out of 250 men, we lost 50-some wounded and 17 dead, right on the beach.
Okay, now let's just take this slow now. Okay, so you've landed. Now, when you actually landed as part of the second wave, had they started shooting yet and firing artillery?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so you were basically under fire, though, hitting the beach.
Right.
Tell me, as a 19, 20-year-old man, when did the reality set in? Maybe this was your first time in combat, maybe not. But again, if not, what are you thinking about? I mean, when you start seeing death and destruction, how are you thinking?
Well, I was in combat in the Solomons at Bougainville, and I got shot down in Bougainville, and I was in the hospital for about 7 or 8 weeks, I guess it was. And I had a very serious wound down there, so I was aware of, you know, what could happen. And when I looked around, I saw our platoon leader. He took us, tried to get us organized, and we looked over to the second platoon, and the platoon leader there was already killed. In fact, 2 of them. The first and second platoon leaders both were killed on the beach. The lieutenants who was, you know, leading the platoons. When we got trying to get organized, the problem was trying to get your contact with your other people. See, you were so had so many problems with it. They would drop mortars on us and artillery fire and so forth. And we were trying to get across a plain. Now, the area where we went into Iwo Jima was the shortest part across. It was probably about 400 yards. And we were trying to get across a plain to cut off Mount Suribachi, and the 28th Marines were going to take Mount Suribachi. Well, we tried to get across, but we couldn't. The fire was so heavy we couldn't get across there until late in the afternoon. And our fire team leader was dead, and our our platoon sergeant, one of them was badly wounded. Two of our officers had been killed, and a number of our men were killed right there on the beach. So our casualties were bad.
Were you able to help any of these men? I mean, or did you just let the medics take care of them?
The medics took care of it. We were. I tell you, our big problem was we were so it was confusion, complete confusion on the beach, and you'd look around, try to find contact with your other individuals, and you couldn't find anybody, and you were pretty much on your own. Mm-hmm. And I remember trying to when our fire team leader was wounded right on the beach. I was taking over the fire team, and I was trying to find the other guys, and I couldn't find them, and they were scattered out and wherever they could get cover, and that was. And I'll tell you the thing that I recall, and I don't know. I guess it was kind of human reaction. We were trying to dig holes, and we were lying there watching the planes come in and strafe, trying to see, what they're going to do to some of these areas. Maybe we can have a chance in the afternoon to get up into that area or something. One thing that I recall, and I tell the kids about this at the schools when I talk, I was digging into a foxhole, and I happened to look up, and I saw a plane, a Navy plane coming down from off one of the carriers, strafing, and he was opening up, he circled back around, and when I looked up, and he was almost just like this, but an angle about like this from me, 100 feet off the ground maybe. And I could see his face, and I've never forgotten this. I could see his face, and all of a sudden he was hit, and his head went forward like this. And on a plane, on the stick, they got, in a military aircraft, they got a red button on it. That's where they press it for the machine guns to fire. And when he fell forward, his head apparently fell right on the button on that stick. And he came right down over us. Now, it didn't affect me, but right down over us like this and down and right over an amphibian tractor coming in to land, all guns blazing, and went right into the bay, and that's the last we saw of the plane.
That was an American plane?
Yes, it was a Navy plane.
Did he hit the amphibian tractor?
No, just barely cleared it, but went right over it. And you could see those guys in the amphibian tractor scrambling to get out of the way. And I think Bill Ross wrote about that in one of his books on Iwo Jima.
Well, let me tell you something. James Bradley, the son of John Bradley, who raised the flags of our fathers.
Right.
I just read that again coming over yesterday in the plane. He talked about that exact incident and how that pilot at the last minute was able to flip that plane over to miss that.
Well, I think
that's it. It was in that book.
I think that's right.
Yeah, that's an amazing story.
I was just unbelievably fascinated by what had happened, and then when I saw that plane, and he did turn that plane
at the last second or whatever, it just
went into the drink, and that was.
You just described it.
That was it.
Chills, I tell you. Oh,
but and then I thought we're in real trouble now. When I saw John Basilone, John was in the C company of our battalion, and he was out there, let's go, and the next thing you know, he's dead.
Didn't he get the Medal of Honor for
Guadalcanal, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what do you remember about him? I mean, tell me what kind of leader he was.
John, I knew him not too well. We had pretty good softball teams in our battalion, and John played on the C company, and we had the B company. We played him a lot. And he had a machine gun section. He had been originally with our company, and he reorganized the machine gun section in C company. But he was a great guy, and he was a gung-ho Marine. I mean, it's probably the story about him. They sent him back on the war bond drives, and he went around the country selling war bonds. He said, "This isn't for me. I'm going back to combat outfit." And he came in, and he was in our battalion then in C company.
Tell me what you remember again about he was killed, and what you remember again about that now. What happened to him?
I didn't see it, but one of the guys in our company said they saw he was up on a knoll and he was giving the machine gun sections this to come on up, get up here, and they said he got hit apparently by a mortar, and they said they just saw the thing blowing up, and that was it. Incidentally, his granddaughter was at our reunion last month in Lafayette. She's writing a book on John and trying to get more. They're trying to get more information on him.
Yeah, I remember reading that name in this book too.
Oh yeah,
It's amazing.
yeah. He was something else.
So you're on the beach. The Japanese are very dug in. In fact, they said they were in Iwo Jima, not on Iwo Jima. They were so dug in. And wasn't it kind of hard for the morale of you guys not seeing the dead Japanese? Because weren't they being pulled back into the caves?
Right.
So you didn't see any
Right.
dead enemy. So I mean, how did it make you feel after you're progressing through the days there? I mean,
Well, the thing that was so disturbing about it, you'd see all this fire and everything coming, but you couldn't see it. I was on the Iwo Jima for 4 days before I saw one, and it was it was really disturbing when you think, oh, this fire's coming, and they warned us the first night. They said, we want you guys to be ready for a bonsai attack because they're going to be coming. Well, it didn't materialize that night. It did later on, but we were all scattered out trying to find each other. In fact, I didn't see our company commander for a couple of days, where we were spread out. We were trying to get organized, and we were digging in, and you're right. They weren't on top of the ground. They were under the ground, and it's like I remember one officer saying, he says, our big problem is they're right down here below us now, probably listening to what we got to say if they can hear through the earth here. But it was unbelievable.
well, what else I've learned too is that even though you guys would knock out a pillbox, they would bring in reinforcements and regain the strength of that strong point, and they would catch you guys off guard at first. When it first
They had caves, what we called them caves. They were actually man-made. They could accommodate up to 400 or 500 guys in one of those places, and you could go from one end of Iwo Jima to the other underground. They had it wired, it was lighted. They had their operating rooms, their ammunition catches were in there, places, stuff like that, and that's why you didn't see them. And one of the most disturbing things started almost immediately. They were so well camouflaged, and they had these spider traps. And a spider trap was a hole in the ground with an oil drum with both ends cut out of it, and they'd be down inside that oil drum with a carbine, well camouflaged, and you'd be moving along, and all of a sudden, one of your guys next to you would be fall over, shot right through the head. And they were successful with this till they brought the war dogs in. And when they brought those Doberman Pinschers and German Shepherds in, they really took care of that.
I'm going to ask you. I'm going to go back for a second, but weren't you trained to climb over cargo nets to go into these landing crafts? But the actual invasion, you went through the holds on the LST. Why did they do that?
They didn't use now, not with us. I think maybe the third Marine Division might have used the troop transport. We were on LSTs for about 12 days. They just had us. The early waves, the guys were all on amphibian tractors, LVTs, I think they called them, and they dropped the ramp on the back, and you go out around them, and I know some of the other outfits came in troop transports, and they came down to cargo nets and so on. Yeah. But we were strictly on the LVTs and just go down the ladder and get right on into them. And
what do you remember about the LVTs? Are they loud?
They were. Yeah, they were. The thing that was most aggravating about them were the fumes, the exhaust fumes. In fact, the only time I ever got seasick was when we were holding maneuvers on Saipan, and one of them they were kept backing it up, and those fumes had kept coming right into the and I got sick from that. That's the only time I've ever gotten sick at sea. But
how many men would fit in one of those approximately?
Larry,
not many.
No, I think maybe 12, 14, probably at the most. Maybe 16 at the most.
Was there a Navy personnel driving that thing or what?
No, it was an amphibian truck. One of our guys from
machine gun on there.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's get back to Iwo now. Okay, first day, first night. I mean, I've got so many questions. I can't ask them all, but I mean, I've never been in combat. I mean, you know, you have been. Is there? How do you stay focused on what you're doing? Did you have faith in God? I mean, how did you get through it?
I think my religious beliefs really helped me. It was, and of course, I heard other guys. One thing I wasn't cussing or anything else up there. I didn't want to. I wanted to be on the good side. But some of the guys, you know, of course, they just whatever they felt that maybe that they hadn't been involved in a religious upbringing or anything, and to them it didn't make much difference, and so on. But yeah, it's hard to judge really how some of them felt at the time. But I tell you, anybody that says they weren't apprehensive or scared or concerned or scared whatever is lying. Is lying, because I went through that at Bougainville, and I was the same way on Iwo Jima. I was really, you know, concerned about my safety and that sort of thing, but not to the point where you didn't get your job done. But
Well, now describe, if you can, just briefly, but in your mind, describe the carnage and the death and the destruction around you. I mean, what do you remember seeing? I've heard reports that there were bodies everywhere. I mean, what do you remember about all that?
well, a lot of that's in this thing I'm going to give
Tell me
you.
now for the video.
But I will.
What do you
But,
remember?
Some of the things that you'd see were just unbelievable. Parts of a body, flies all over it, big black flies, and you'd see individuals that, and I tell you where this came from a lot of from the shells from the ships. You know, some of those were 16-inch shells. They weighed 2,700 pounds, and when one of those things would hit, it was something else. And we would find a lot of those Japanese. But what he did, Kurabayashi, he had every dead Japanese soldier removed where we couldn't see them until it got on up the island where they couldn't do that anymore. But he had all those bodies. I don't know what they did with them, pulled them back into the caves, because he didn't want us to know how successful we were. And that was very common for what they were doing. And then when it got bad, the Seabees came in with their bulldozers and so forth, and they just dug big holes out and pushed them in and covered them up with rocks and sand or whatever it was.
So it was a temporary cemetery or whatever?
Yeah. Well, it was permanent for them. They were just probably still there, but they just dig a big hole and push them in, because the doctors had told them, you're going to have to do something about this because of the danger of disease and that sort of thing. But I remember watching them one time down there. We were sitting on some rocks watching them push those bodies down in big, just like almost like a big pit that they done.
Well, you know, obviously, I mean, over 7,000 of you were killed during that battle. I mean, 25,000 wounded. This is what I've gotten, the statistics, and that's an incredible amount of people to die for the airstrips that were there. How do you feel about the overall operation and just the bloodshed? What we needed to do? Why did we need Iwo Jima? And you already told me so.
Well, I think it was necessary, really, because it saved. I think we saved about 25,000 lives. I got the figures, I had them somewhere. I don't recall exactly, but I think we saved about maybe something like 2,200 planes that possibly wouldn't have gotten back to Tinian, something like that. It was a tremendous number. And I remember the first one that came in, I think it was called Dynamite, D-I-N-A-H. They were out kissing the ground and so forth. And I think there was an Army nurse on one of them, the first one that landed. We couldn't believe it. We hadn't seen a B-29 before. Came in there and landed on that airstrip and saved that plane. And then they came in periodically. They were going up bombing around Tokyo and Yokohama, some of those places.
Now, you were on Iwo Jima through the whole thing. I mean, tell me about...
No, I was there for 21 days.
Okay, tell me about the flag raising, what you remember about the flag raising, where you were and what you saw, what you heard.
We were assaulting some blockhouses about in the middle of the island. And one of the guys turned around to me and said, "Look." And we looked up and we saw the flag. It was just going up. And then a tremendous cheer across the island. And as I said before, we didn't know whether we were going to be able to stay there or not. In fact, they actually were thinking about possibly having to evacuate there, the way that thing was going. And then when we saw that flag go up, we knew we were there to stay. It was, but you know, when you think, and I'm getting ahead here, 31 days to take that place, and we were going to get it in 3 to 5 days. That's.
Well, the Japanese were there to die. They basically, that
Right.
was their grave. They were going to die there.
They figured Kurabayashi, as we understood it, had told his men, you take 10 Americans for every 1 Japanese and we can be successful. And that's what they had planned to do, I guess.
And I assume probably most of them were killed there too, eventually.
I think we took probably 400 or 500 prisoners, no more than that. But it was, we ready to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. And I'll give you an incident. Up in one area, and we'd really had a real battle up in that area, and they were in caves and so forth in the higher elevations there. And a Jeep came up with a big amplifier on it and a Japanese language interpreter. And he was talking to them in Japanese about surrendering and we'll treat you well, we'll this. And they were shooting back at him. And they'd keep talking to him. So finally, they just called back for the big 155 artillery and some of them, and they just blew the whole place out of there. And that was it. But you know, it was just that kind of stuff that went on.
Now, again, during your experience, as you would move inland or wherever you went, now you were PFC, rifleman or what?
BA, I carried a Browning automatic rifle. It was, was one of the real great weapons we had at that time. There's a picture of it over there on the wall. You can see later.
I'd love to see a copy of that. Okay, so you had a BAR. Now, tell me about any skirmishes, or were you involved with taking over any of these pillboxes, or knocking out these caves or fortresses, or what do you remember about any of that?
Yeah, we were in one place, and you'll probably read about it in some of those books that have been written. It was called Hill 362A, okay. And it probably was the most costly area of all on Iwo Jima for the Marine Corps. And we were assaulting that. And it'd been a cold morning, and we were told we have to take this area. Well, it had higher, like small cliffs and so forth around, all rocks and miserable area, just unbelievable that anybody would want it. And they said, we have to take it. So we started moving out that morning and into the place, and we got into probably the most fierce firefight of the whole campaign. And one of the guys that was in my squad had gone around around to the other side of the area, and he was coming up on the edge of the cliff to try to get better position to fire, and he was waving to me to come on, and the next thing I saw, he just fell over. He'd been shot right through the head. They let him move around in there, and we had 2 or 3 of the guys that were right with me. I'd look over and they were down. They were dead. And we had one guy, a big fellow from New York. His name was Seymour Fisher. He was one of the biggest guys in our company, I think. And he was lying out in front, yelling for help, and I finally got where I could get out to him. I got him on my back and crawled over to behind some rocks, and we were able to get him out and get him back to an aid station. And he apparently lived, but I had never heard anything more from him, but I saw that he was on the wounded list and had survived. Mm-hmm. But our company executive, great guy, Jim Mayenscheim from West Virginia, had been decorated at Guadalcanal, and he was our exec, and he was out trying to reorganize the company. It was just scattered out, and you know what you did, you had to go wherever you could to get cover, and that broke up our line of I don't know whatever you want to call it, where we were pretty well organized, and he got cut off up in there, and they killed him, and we lost him, and we lost 2 other officers, and I forget the number of men we lost there, but it was one of the biggest in the entire Battle of Iwo Jima, at our battalion.
So what was I mean, Hill 362A, I mean, you know, the John Wayne movies, they're going up and all this stuff, I mean, but it's like, you know, you said that was one of the most fierce firefights of the whole campaign, and what were you shooting at any? Could you see anybody?
No. You're shooting at areas. You know, you hear a sound, so you start trying to shoot into some of those areas. But you'd look around, and everybody said, "Where are they?" Well, they were all under rocks, and they were in holes and so forth. Their camouflage job was just unbelievable. It's the most remarkable thing I ever saw. And they'd be in a hole, and they'd have some brush over them or something like that. And the only way you could get them out would be have the dogs send the dogs in.
So how did you actually kill them? With the flamethrowers, grenades into those?
Yeah, with the flamethrowers, and the tanks came up with flame-throwing tanks. Now those flame-throwing tanks they'd throw that napalm about 75 yards, and what they would do, they would fire first, and then it would hit and splatter. It was like Jell-O, and it would stick. And then the second one, they would light the match on it, and when they threw the second barrage in there, it would set all of it on fire, and that's how they got a lot of those pillboxes and so forth. And those were the tanks. Now the regular flamethrowers, the guys that had them on their back and so forth, they'd go in and they'd get up near the pillbox and see a crevice or something. They'd shoot a little bit of napalm in there, and then they'd light their match, and then the second salvo they fired was lit, and it set the whole thing on fire.
Was there any covering fire? Did you just watch this? What happened? I mean,
oh yeah, we'd be covering fire for them. Yeah, yeah. It was. I'll tell you, a lot of it was unconventional warfare. You just did whatever you could to survive, and I think even the general staff admitted that some of the things that happened, they happened just because men were fighting for survival. And we had one incident that happened right at 362A. The guy was a good friend of mine from Iowa, and we dug in for the night, and the next morning I heard the guy over there screaming, and I said, "What's wrong?" He was only from here, that lamp from us, and he said, "Anderson's dead." And I said, "What happened?" And they were, what you do when you'd sleep 2 hours and watch 2 hours. You know, you have 2 guys in a hole, and then you'd wake the other guy up. Okay, it's your turn now. And he had just been off the watch, and he was lying on his stomach sleeping, and an expended 37 millimeter shell, American, when they'd been firing at any Japanese kamikaze planes and so forth, apparently came down and went right through his spine, right almost between the shoulders. And this guy said, "I never heard a word from him." He said, "I was sitting there awake, and he said I never heard him make a sound, and he was dead. The thing penetrated his spine and killed him instantly." And just stuff like that happened that you couldn't figure out why something like that would happen. But we sat up on a ridge there one night watching them sink the Lunga Point when aircraft carrier, when we could see the whole thing. They kept the island lit at night. They had flares. You could see all over the island at night. Navy did a fantastic job with that. It was incredible. And but you just lost men like that. It was hard to understand. But a lot of our guys from our original outfit, they were dead in the first week. So, and I guess, another incident happened right after that. As a matter of fact, we were just coming back from that area, and they started dropping mortars on us. And the guys in my fire team, there were four of them, and I looked over, and just about that time that mortar shell dropped, and myself and a fellow named Wayne Ellis from Kansas. He was a young kid, about 17 or 18. Not a thing happened to us, and two of those guys were killed instantly. The one guy's rifle was completely destroyed, and we went over to try to see if he was alive, if we could help him. He didn't have a mark on him. He was killed by the concussion. When that thing hit, this concussion killed him and just completely destroyed his rifle. And the other one was pretty badly mangled, you know, from the mortar shell. But just unbelievable things happened. You could hardly imagine anything happening like that. But
You felt pretty fortunate that you weren't hit. Now, you were eventually injured
yes,
on Iwo Jima.
yes.
Tell me about what happened.
Well, we were not too far from the end of the island. It was on the 21st day, and it was my birthday. My birthday was 4 days before that when I got hit. And I remember a new lieutenant had just taken over, Jim Walsh from Tennessee, and he was talking with me, and he said, "How old are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm 21 today." And he said, "You picked the hell of a place to have a birthday." And he was killed 4 days later. But we were moving up and running into a lot of sniper fire and so forth. And we got word that they were a very heavy concentration of Japanese in this one particular area, and said, "You guys are going to have to go in and get them out of there. We know we don't have that many people, but we have to go in there." And we started up, and I looked over, and I saw a heavy machine gun, a water-cooled machine gun, and I saw a guy standing there, and I went over and I said, "Hey, where are you guys sitting?" And the guy turned around. It was a guy I went to high school with in my hometown. And I hadn't seen him for a long time, but we stood there and talked for a little bit. And he told me, he said, "Well, we're going to be going down through here. We're going to set up our machine guns over here." He said, I presume you guys are going to get this area." Well, we started moving up, and there was all kind of sniper fire, and they were dropping mortars. And I had a young kid from Baltimore, 17 years old, that we picked him up in a replacement. And he had, let me change that a little bit to something that happened before that. He came in that first day, or the first day that I got him. It was part way through the campaign, and we were told the Japanese are going to be infiltrating this place at night to try to get water, because that was one of the big problems on that island, was water. And they said they wanted me and two other guys tie in our Browning automatic rifles in the crossfire, and said they'll have to come in through this area. Well, so I told him, I said, "Okay, you want to take the first watch, or do you want me?" And he said, "Oh, you go ahead and take it." And he said, I'll sleep first." So he did. And then I took over, and it was probably about 9 o'clock or so. And I woke up, and he was sound asleep. And boy, I gave him a going over, I'll tell you, because that was fatal, you know, when that happened to you. So he went back to sleep then, and these Japanese came in, and I don't know, there were 8 or 10, something like that, and we could hear them, hear them talking there, and all of a sudden we just opened up, and the next morning there were 8 or 10 of them dead out there. But when I opened up with that Browning automatic rifle, that kid came up out of that slit trench or foxhole. He was scared to death. He didn't sleep there. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. But he was with me when this happened. And I don't know what he was doing, but he got shot. And he got shot right through here, right through the buttocks, and it came out the other side, and he was screaming and yelling. He was only 17 years old. And I got him down into a shell crater, and I told him, I said, "You keep quiet. There's snipers all over this place." And he was still, and I put my hand over his mouth one time to try to suppress his screams. And I got some sulfa powder out and dusted him with that, and tried to clean it up a little bit. And I said, "Now you stay here, and I'll get you out of here." Well, I put him down in there, and I put my BAR up on the edge where I could get back to fire it. And then I thought, I got to get him out of here. He's going to, So I got him up the edge, and I crawled over the edge of this shelter. And this place must have been about 10 feet deep. And I got him up over the edge of that thing, and I put him on my back, and I crawled out through the rocks and so forth. And I must have gone about 100 yards maybe. And I'd crawl, and I'd pick him up and try to run with him and so on. And there was a Navy farmer's mate came up there, and they were stretcher bearers really, and they'd been moving guys out. And they said, "Can we take him?" I said, "Yeah, take him." So they did. Well, the big mistake I made then was going back where I'd been. And I was on the run, and I had a M1 rifle I'd picked up. And when I got to the edge, I just got ready to jump into the crater. One of them hit me, and he went in through here, and it came out my back. That's a picture I told you I had. And that thing, and I tell these kids in the school that when I talk to them, they ask me about some of that stuff, and I distinctly remember turning a complete flip in the air, and I landed on my back in the bottom of that shell crater. And I could feel the blood running down my back and so forth, and I knew I had to get out of there some way. So I waited a little bit, and I figured, they figured, well, we got him. And I got up the edge, and I rolled over the edge and then crawled out behind some rocks until I waited a little while, and then got on down, and one of the guys from the aid station picked me up, and they took me down to the beach. And some guys, when they were dressing the thing, some guy said, "Look over here, we're going to put you in the movies." And I thought some guy joking, and I looked over and they took this picture. This is the one that was in the Washington Post, and it's in all the TV films and so forth now.
That's the one you've got?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah.
So you were evacuated out of there?
I was taken down there to the beach, and when they took that picture and so forth, and a doctor came over and said, "Get this guy out of here. He's got to have surgeries. Get him on a plane to Guam." So they put me on a plane to Guam, and we got down there. There must have been about 15 of us on it because it was bad. Now we're up near the 400 or 500 yards maybe from the end of the island there, and they had a whole load of us, and we hadn't shaved in almost a month. We hadn't had a bath or a shower in that 2 or 3 days before. On the LST was the last time we'd had a shower or a bath. Blood all over us, filthy, crummy, and some nurse I remember saying, "My God, how much longer are they going to continue to come?" She looked at the other one and she said, "We can't take much more of this." And I told her, I said, "Don't worry, we're getting toward the end of the island." Gosh, it was another 10 days before that thing was over. Mm-hmm. And they took me into surgery. Well, first of all, the guy said, "You guys want something to eat?" I said, "Yeah, anything you got." So they gave us, and the thing I remember was watermelon. And I ate a big piece of watermelon, and they took me into surgery, gave me sodium pentothal, and I vomited all over the operating table. And when I came out of that doctor really started chewing me out. He said, "Don't you have enough sense not to eat before, sir?" I said, "I didn't know I wasn't supposed to eat." And I said, "Besides that, I haven't eaten for 2 days or something like that." And so on. So they didn't say too much more to us, but they cleaned us up. And that's the first time we'd been in a bed, I think, in, probably 2 months. Mm-hmm. Because we were sleeping just on a mattress pad on the deck of the LST. Mm-hmm. And just a roll, we had a mattress cover and a bedroll thing with a waterproof gizmo on it. That's about all you had to sleep on.
Let me kind of come off that a little bit now. Looking back, I got a couple questions for you, but what does freedom mean to you as an American, as a World War II veteran? Looking back on the sacrifices that were made in today's society, what does freedom mean to you, Dick?
That's the thing, and I always try to impress on these kids how important freedom is. When we saw what we were fighting against, the type of people that we were fighting, and later, of course, I was in Japan later for occupation duty, and I saw how those people lived. and how important it is to be able to live in a free country. That's why I fly that flag every day out there. And I have always tried to impress that on the kids. And I remember during the Vietnam War, when I was teaching history in the school, and how some of the kids used to be when you mentioned that, and boy, they'd really turn you off with their attitudes. But I think that, you have to fight for it. You have to fight. And of course, the war we were in was a war of survival. And I remember when I was in Japan doing occupation duty, and we saw how those people lived and how the way they had, they did what they were told, and the type of government that they had, and that sort of thing. Greatest thing in the world for the freedom we have. And I can see why, why you have to fight sometimes for it. But I'd have done the same thing over again. I feel that the government, some of these guys, the government, they don't owe me anything. That's the way I feel about it. That was my job. My two brothers were both in the Navy. They were in, one of them was in before the war, and then the other one was in right after the war started. They were both in combat areas, and I had 3 uncles that fought in World War I, and so forth. And I just figured we did, it's part of your job. That's, if you're going to live in a free country, you gotta pay your dues.
Do you consider yourself a hero?
No, not really. I got the Silver Star Medal, and I got 2 Purple Hearts, and I didn't, feel anything particularly about that. They gave me the medal right when I left Japan. The citation had gone through, and they called me out and had me out in front of the company, and they pinned the Silver Star on, and I got a Purple Heart at Bougainville, and then I got another one at Iwo Jima, and I figured that's just part of the job. That some of the kids asked me, at the schools and so forth, well, you think it was really worth it to do that, and stuff like that? I said, well, you're going to that football game Friday night because of what we did over in those places, and they get the point there. But the kids today, I think they're great, really. A lot of these kids getting a bad knock from. I got to talk to those classes. Those kids are great. I talked to 750 people, or kids, Veterans Day in the auditorium out at Kerin High School. And those kids were great. They asked questions, they polite and so forth. And I guess all it takes a couple idiots and one, to cause some problems or something like that.
What high school did you just talk at?
I spoke at Kerin just last Veterans Day. And then next week on Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm speaking up at Lakota West. And Saturday, I was the MC they've got a place over at Beechwood School, a teacher, done a remarkable job. He was fed up with the textbooks. They had nothing about World War II in them and so forth. So he started a thing. Have you heard about it?
No, I haven't heard about that. Go ahead.
I think you might be interested.
Did you say Beechwood?
Beechwood School. It's right over.
Beechwood, Kentucky?
No. It's an elementary school in Green Hills.
Oh, okay.
From a historical standpoint, again, tell me again, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th Marines were involved in the invasion.
Right.
The 4th went in with the 5th, or how?
4th and the 5th went in together. As a matter of fact, I was the contact man with the first guy from the 24th Marines. Ours was 25, 26, and 27. Theirs was 21, 22, or 22, 23, and 24. Okay. And we didn't find each other. That's how confusing it was. And we never did get the contact together to where we kept the lines intact.
And then 3rd was a reserve unit?
Yes, the 3rd was reserve unit, and I think after 9 days they brought 2 battalions of our 2 regiments of the 3rd Marine Division in. Our regiment was rendered inoperable after about 2 weeks, and I think they combined some others together with us to make about a battalion and a half, maybe.
And the 28th took Suribachi, right?
Yeah, 28th
Who
were
was the head of that? Harry? What was the guy's name? Harry something?
Harry Liversidge.
Yeah, was he
Yeah,
the head?
yeah.
And what do they call him? Howland Matt Smith?
Howland Mad Smith. He was the commanding general of the Marine Amphibious Corps, 1st Marine Amphibious Corps. And he was a character.
But I heard he was the Patton of the Pacific.
He was. He was, but he was a religious man too.
Yeah,
And-
I think I heard him. He was reading his Bible or something the
Yeah,
night before.
yeah,
or
he
something.
was, and but he was one of these guys that you go, And I remember we had one incident up near 362A, and one of the guys said, "This is impossible. How could anybody expect us to take this area?" And one officer said, "Howland Mad says go at 1 p.m." Or then it was 1300, I guess, in the Navy time, Howland Mad says you go today. And so that's the way it was. But, and one thing, he got a bad deal. When they signed the armistice, or when they signed the surrender terms on the battleship Missouri, Nimitz wouldn't invite him. Ignored him. And boy, he never did get over that. He in fact, when I go back to the Marine reunions, every once in a while somebody brings that up about how badly Howland Mad was treated on the Missouri and so on. So
Where's your next reunion going to be next year?
next year's in Philadelphia,
Is it?
and then the following year's in Dallas.
Is there like a website that they have or some contact?
Yeah,
I'd be interested in following the.
I'll get it. I'll get. I don't have it right here, but I'll get it for you from.
Now, and you've got some pictures now. Can I scan these pictures
Sure.
that you have? Tell me about the smell of that island.
Terrible.
You're talking about. Tell me about it.
Terrible. It was the. You ever smell rotten eggs? That's exactly what it was, from the sulfur in the island. And we cooked rations in the ground. And I tell these kids this in school, I don't think they believe me. But it was so hot, you just dig a hole in the ground, maybe like this, stick a can of sea ration in, punch a hole in it to let the steam come out, and in a short time, it was so hot you could hardly eat it. The big problem we encountered with that was digging a foxhole and trying to stay in it. And what you'd have to do is, during a real intense shelling, you'd be in there and jump out till back in and back out and so forth. And after a while, when we could find cardboard or anything from old munitions boxes or something like that, we'd line the foxhole with. Some guys even carried some of that stuff with them. And it was the odor was terrible. The odor from the Japanese bodies it was just terrible, and that's what they had always were so concerned about a disease spreading there from that, and they actually sprayed the island with DDT. Came in with planes and sprayed them, almost like the guys did on the fields, wasn't it? Where they would spray them for bugs and so forth. And it was unbelievable. The odor was terrible, and it was nothing but sand and rock and volcanic ash and stuff like that. It was and the Japanese blended in so well with. That's where we had made a big mistake. Our uniforms were marine dungarees were just a light green color. Theirs blended right in with the terrain, and that was a great advantage they had. But the island itself was unreal. It was terrible, the odor.
Yeah, that's what I was reading there. Can you do me one favor?
Sure.
Can you, into the camera now, can you just do a salute, hold it for 3 seconds and then release it? Just a salute? Okay.